Archangel Michael says, "This is not for everyone, only for the one who keeps repeating the same emotional cycle and wonders why they can't escape it. Thank God you are watching it now. Heaven speaks in patterns, not noise. And today, Archangel Michael leans close to whisper to the soul that has grown tired of running in circles. This isn't for the crowd. This is for you. The one who lies awake at night, heart racing with familiar dread. The one who has seen joy only as a brief visitor, not a companion. The one who knows the pain of returning to what you swore you'd never revisit. If you're hearing this, your cycle has been exposed, and Michael is no longer requesting your attention. He's demanding it. You feel it, don't you? That invisible thread pulling you back into what hurts. The same type of relationship, the same inner dialogue, the same silent desperation that disguises itself as routine. You've blamed the world. You've blamed others. You've blamed time, fate, even yourself. But you never saw the spiritual loop, programmed deeper than memory, trapping you in repetition. Michael says, today is the day it unravels, not through logic, not through force, but through revelation. And this message, long overdue, will be your breaking point or your breakthrough. Do not look away. This is not motivation. This is prophecy. You have cried for answers. Now heaven cries for you to receive them. The signs you've ignored, the familiar pain, the repeated betrayal, the emotional déjà vu, are not coincidences. They are signals, divine alerts. Archangel Michael has traced every step of your cycle and every tear you've ever justified. He is not just watching anymore. He is intervening, because you are chosen, and chosen souls are never meant to stay bound. If you're still here, it means your spirit has recognized itself in these words. That means the door is opening, but entering it will cost you your comfort zone. This path will hurt before it heals. It will confront before it frees. But this is the only way out of the invisible trap, the invisible loop, the invisible prison that's been eating your purpose from the inside out. Michael says, brace yourself. What you are about to receive will not just speak to you, it will awaken you. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 1214. You keep wondering why you're always ending up back here, back at square one. The faces may change, the jobs may shift, the locations may rotate, but the emotional undertone stays the same. You feel the familiar sting of rejection wrapped in different names. You hear the same voice of inadequacy echoing in different moments. You keep choosing differently, but somehow always experiencing the same. This is not just a pattern of bad luck. Archangel Michael calls it a spiritual loop, one that must be confronted or it will keep stealing years from your destiny. Heaven is watching. You walk in circles, not because you are weak, but because you've never been told how the enemy works in repetition. You don't just fight demons in your life. You fight cycles, emotional strongholds that feel natural because they've existed longer than your awareness. Somewhere along your timeline, a lie became a law inside you. You're not worthy. You don't deserve lasting peace. You must fight for love, even when it hurts. These were not your original truths. They were planted through trauma, repeated through experience, and now they govern your decisions like spiritual gravity pulling you backward. Michael says, this is the moment to name your cycle, because you cannot break what you refuse to name. You know exactly what it is. It might be the cycle of giving too much and being left empty, the cycle of chasing validation from those who withhold it, the cycle of sabotaging your peace because chaos feels more familiar. Some part of you believes you're safer in the storm than in silence. Some part of you still equates pain with purpose. This is where the undoing begins, because Archangel Michael isn't just bringing a message, he's bringing a sword that cuts soul ties, generational echoes, and emotional contracts that were never divine. And here's what's dangerous. The longer you remain in a cycle, the more you start believing it's your identity. You confuse survival with personality. You say, this is just who I am. But that's not true. That's who you became under pressure. That's who you shaped yourself into while trying to stay afloat in a storm that wasn't meant to last this long. You learned how to bend yourself to trauma, but you never learned how to return to truth. Michael says, this message is the bridge back to yourself, to the version of you that existed before the cycle got its grip on you. Type I am rising to get blessing 5678. You are not crazy for feeling like you're reliving the same nightmare in different ways. You are spiritually intelligent enough to detect what others ignore. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are discerning. You're not broken. You're sensitive to repetition. And that's a gift. Because that sensitivity is how heaven reaches you. Every time you said, why does this keep happening? You are closer to freedom than you knew. That question was the key. That frustration was the edge of the pattern. Now Michael is pushing you over that edge. Into revelation. Cycles do not break by accident. They must be interrupted with light. And light always exposes. It exposes how your choices are wired to avoid abandonment. Not pursue joy. It reveals how you tolerate red flags because they remind you of something old. It shows how your comfort zone is soaked in dysfunction, but still feels safe. Archangel Michael is standing at the core of your cycle right now, urging you to stop negotiating with your wound and start listening to your wisdom. What you're feeling in your chest right now isn't fear. It's the shaking of the cage that's about to open. The reason this message found you today is because it's not random. It's ordained. Heaven has been watching you try to climb out with no ladder, escape with no map, pray with no reply. But now the reply is clear. This is your map. This is your ladder. Michael's voice is your signal. You've been waiting for confirmation, and here it is. Not as a sign on the outside, but as a shift on the inside. You already feel it, don't you? That something is ending. And what's ending is your agreement with what has kept you stuck. It's not just the pain that must die. It's your loyalty to it. Type I am blessed to get the blessing 3636. You've worn the same mask of strength for too long. Smiled through the ache. Carried others while you collapsed in secret. But cycles don't just drain energy, they drain identity. The more you stay in them, the less you recognize yourself. This is not just about healing. It's about recovering who you were before the repetition trained you to forget. Archangel Michael is reaching through this message to remind you, the you that's been buried is still alive. And he is waiting to rise. Not later, not next year, not when you feel ready, but now, while the old is collapsing and heaven is still whispering. You've made peace with pain that was never supposed to be permanent. Somewhere deep inside, you decided that pain was easier to understand than peace. That chaos was more manageable than calm. That disappointment was safer than hope. Because at least when you expect the fall, it doesn't hurt as much when you hit the ground. But Archangel Michael says, that's not protection. It's bondage. You've normalized suffering to the point where you call it life. And this message is your divine interruption. Because heaven never assigned you to patterns that diminish you. You've cried for freedom, but kept feeding the very patterns that enslave you. You replay conversations in your head, clinging to the memory of what someone almost gave you. You reread messages from people who made you feel like you weren't enough, hoping to find proof that they cared. You hold tight to the version of love that keeps you anxious, overthinking, walking on eggshells. You call it passion. You call it history. But Michael calls it a soul wound repeating itself. And he says clearly now, what you're attached to is not healing you. It's haunting you. You must understand something sacred now. Your emotional cycle is not just emotional. It is spiritual. The reason it feels so heavy isn't because you're weak. It's because this pattern was inherited, reinforced, and never challenged. You didn't start this war, but you're the one heaven has anointed to end it. That's why you feel tired all the time. That's why you feel like you're carrying something you can't explain. Because you are. You're carrying patterns that have lived in your bloodline for generations. Archangel Michael says, the weight on your chest is not yours alone. It's ancestral, but you've been chosen to put it down. Type I am chosen to get the blessing 6868. It will hurt to let go. Of course it will. Because pain, as toxic as it is, became your routine. You don't just break habits, you mourn them. You grieve the identity you built around surviving. That's why you feel torn when something good shows up. It doesn't feel like home, because home was where the hurt lived. You know how to handle betrayal. You know how to expect abandonment. You know how to give more than you receive. But Michael says, now you will learn how to receive. Not scraps, not silence, not second best, but divine restoration. You were not born to explain your worth to people who refuse to see it. You were not designed to water deserts hoping they'll bloom. You were not placed on this earth to babysit dysfunction while calling it loyalty. You've done enough. You've bent enough. You've bled enough. The cycle has consumed enough of your light. And now, Archangel Michael stands between you and your next decision, commanding you to pause. This is the moment where the loop can either continue or collapse, and you get to choose. That's the power of awareness. It gives you a weapon the enemy never expected. Discernment. Type I am free to get the blessing 4141. You might be tempted to return to what's familiar after hearing all this. That's how cycles work. They seduce you with nostalgia. They whisper, maybe it will be different this time. They flash moments of sweetness to make you forget the storms. But remember this. If something requires you to abandon yourself in order to keep it, it was never sent by heaven. Michael warns you now. Do not romanticize your prison. Do not mistake temporary comfort for true transformation. This is the line. And once you see it, going back is no longer ignorance. It's self-betrayal. This is not a punishment. It's an awakening. And awakenings are loud. They shake the floors of your old identity. They rattle the bones of who you had to be. They stir the parts of you that have been silent for too long. Archangel Michael says, let the shaking continue, because every piece that breaks is making room for something sacred. You will not be empty forever. You will not cry over the same things next year. You will not keep repeating this pattern until it becomes your legacy. You are not cursed. You are not lost. You are becoming. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path. Type I am becoming to get the blessing 8,585. The journey won't be linear. Some days you'll want to return to the old because it feels safer. Some days you'll miss the people who hurt you. Some days you'll doubt the clarity you feel right now. But clarity is not a mood. It's a message. And that message is echoing through Archangel Michael's voice tonight. You were not created to suffer repeatedly. You were created to rise repeatedly. This message didn't find you to inspire you. It found you to activate you. You will never be the same. And that is the entire point. You've mistaken loyalty for love, endurance for virtue, and silence for strength. And that's how the cycle has kept its grip on you. By convincing you that staying loyal to your pain is the same as being faithful to your heart. But Archangel Michael says, You were never called to stay loyal to a wound that never heals. You were called to rise from it. The reason the emotional cycle continues is not because you're unaware. It's because you still carry a sacred attachment to the person, the moment, or the story that once hurt you. And this is the part that must be undone gently, but fully. You see, spiritual cycles don't just live in actions. They live in emotions, in the beliefs you've hidden under your skin, in the guilt you feel when you begin to choose yourself, in the anxiety that rises when you finally set a boundary. Those aren't random. They're programmed reactions to old environments. You became fluent in the language of self-sacrifice, fluent in making excuses for people who never made space for your spirit. Michael says, this is your unlearning season, not because you've done something wrong, but because you're ready to do it right. For the first time, you've been loyal to someone else's comfort, even when it cost you your own clarity. You've abandoned your soul to keep others company in their chaos. You've dimmed your light to avoid confrontation, silenced your truth to avoid being left behind, and swallowed your tears to avoid being too much. But now your soul is at war with your survival instincts, and Michael is amplifying your inner voice until it becomes louder than your fear. He is whispering what you already know. This pattern must end. And it starts with severing your loyalty to the things that broke you. By and breaking free to get the blessing 7171. Even now, you might feel resistance rising. That's normal. That's not you. It's the residue of the pattern reacting to exposure. The cycle does not want to die quietly. It wants to convince you that you need it, that you are nothing without it. But Michael calls that bluff. You are not what happened to you. You are not what they failed to see in you. You are not the one who has to carry all the weight, all the time, in every room. You're allowed to exist without performing. You're allowed to be held, to be honored, to be whole. It takes courage to walk away from dysfunction when it's dressed in familiarity. That's why Archangel Michael is standing at your side now, not to push you, but to empower you. Because what you're shedding is not small. It's the version of you that kept surviving instead of living. The version that believed love must be earned through endurance. That peace is a privilege you don't deserve. That every goodbye is a failure. But the truth is, some goodbyes are sacred. Some endings are divine. And some doors are meant to close so that your spirit can breathe. I am sacred to get the blessing 2929. Listen closely. What you feel right now is sacred discomfort. It means you're finally moving. The cage was built from thoughts, from repeated decisions made in the name of protection. But protection became your prison. Every time you said I'm fine while dying inside. Every time you smiled to avoid confrontation. Every time you gave more when you had nothing left. That's not strength. That's programming. And Michael is here to overwrite it with something higher, something holy, something that sounds like your real voice, your true tone, the song you were meant to sing before the noise of your pain silenced it. There's no shame in being caught in a cycle, but there is tragedy in staying there once truth arrives. And truth has arrived, wrapped in these words, carried on the wings of Archangel Michael himself. You are not being punished. You are being awakened. And awakening is a violent act against illusion. It tears down what kept you safe but stuck. It rips the mask off the fear that kept you small. And in that tearing, in that unraveling, is your resurrection. The emotional pattern is not stronger than the one who sees it now. The cycle breaks because you finally can. I am awake to get the blessing 4848. This is the part where the healing gets real. Not romantic, not poetic, but honest. You will feel the ache of release, the ache of detachment. You will feel like you're betraying the past when you choose the future. But that's not betrayal. That's alignment. You will start to recognize where you once folded your truth just to be accepted. You'll realize how often you kept your standards low to avoid being alone. But solitude with clarity is better than company with confusion. And Michael wants you to know, you are never alone when you walk in alignment with heaven's call. You silence yourself to survive. You swallowed your voice to keep the peace. You became agreeable so you wouldn't be abandoned. And now, that quiet has turned into a prison. Archangel Michael says, it is time to reclaim your voice. Not just the words, but the sound of your soul. Because this emotional cycle thrives in silence. It grows in secrecy. It wraps itself in false humility and makes you believe that being invisible is virtuous. But heaven never made you small. Heaven made you radiant. And it is time to rise back into the volume of your truth. For too long, you believed that love meant shrinking, that being chosen meant sacrificing, that being good meant never being loud. But your silence was never safety. It was suppression. Suppression of your instincts, your knowing, your power. And every time you suppressed who you were to be accepted, the cycle gripped you tighter. Michael says, this is the chapter where silence ends, not through rage, not through vengeance, but through sacred clarity. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to say, this no longer works for me. Without apology. There's a deep fatigue in your spirit. Not from running, but from repressing. From years of pretending that everything was okay when your chest was caving in. You smiled to make others feel comfortable while you suffered in silence. You tolerated energy that drained you because confrontation made you anxious. But now Archangel Michael stands beside you with a sword of truth. Not to attack, but to cut away the guilt that's been keeping you voiceless. He says, your voice is not a weapon, it's a key. And it's the key that will unlock the cycle you've been trapped in. Tied by am unlocking to get the blessing 5353. Reclaiming your voice will feel unfamiliar at first. The moment you say no, your body might shake. The moment you express a need, your mind may panic. That's normal. That's not weakness. It's detox. You are detoxing from a life where your needs were placed last. From relationships where you had to abandon yourself just to belong. But belonging is not supposed to cost your essence. Michael says, you were never meant to be easy to ignore. You were meant to disrupt dysfunction by being fully alive. And that begins when you start honoring the voice that has been waiting inside you. The emotional cycle fed on your compliance. It convinced you that love meant tolerating pain, that endurance meant being quiet. But the truth is this. Real love listens. Real love honors your truth. Real love does not require your silence to survive. If it does, it's not love. It's control. And Michael is separating you now. Not just from the people or places, but from the belief systems that made control look like care. He's cleansing your vision so you can finally see the difference between attention and affection, between manipulation and intimacy, between fear and faith. Type I am healing to get the blessing 6262. The you that's emerging now will be misunderstood by those who benefited from your silence. That's okay. Let them go. The you that's returning now will make others uncomfortable because you no longer bend. That's okay. Let them squirm. This is your sacred rebellion against everything that kept you small. You're not being rebellious for the sake of chaos. You're being reborn for the sake of purpose. And purpose requires space. Space to breathe, to speak, to exist as you are, not as who you trained yourself to be just to keep others comfortable. Let this sink in. You were never too much. You were never too intense. You were never too emotional. You were just surrounded by people who were too disconnected from themselves to hold space for your fullness. That was never your fault. And Michael says, stop apologizing for the light you carry. Stop dimming it. Stop diluting it. This message is heaven's declaration over your life. You are enough. Not when you're quieter. Not when you're softer. Right now. And if that truth makes some people walk away, Let them. They were only sent to show you where your cycle began. By am enough to get the blessing 7979. This is the fire you've been asking for. Not to destroy, but to purify. The cycle cannot continue when your voice is awakened. That's why you feel this internal shaking. It's the old identity breaking down, the mask slipping off, the shell cracking open. What's emerging is holy. What's rising is unstoppable. And the moment you fully accept that your voice is sacred, your entire life begins to shift. Your cycle is ending, not with a loud crash, but with a steady flame, a fire that says, I will no longer be silent about what hurts me. I will no longer bow to what breaks me. Even after reclaiming your voice, there's one more enemy to confront, the one that lives within, the inner echo of self-betrayal, the part of you that still doubts whether you're worthy of the very freedom you seek. Archangel Michael says, freedom requires alignment, not just with truth, but with yourself. You cannot rise while still negotiating with the version of you that keeps apologizing for existing. The emotional cycle doesn't just repeat because of others. It repeats because you keep abandoning yourself in subtle, silent ways. And now, that internal betrayal must come to an end. You said yes when you meant no, laughed when you were dying inside, supported others when you needed support the most, and worst of all, you've looked in the mirror and questioned your own worth based on how others mishandled you. That is not humility. That is self-betrayal. You have tied your value to their inability to recognize your soul. But Michael says, they were never the measuring stick. They were the mirror that showed you where your boundaries collapsed. You do not need their apology to be healed. You only need your own permission to stop bleeding for their approval. Healing begins the moment you decide that you will not abandon yourself again, that you will no longer let the fear of loneliness drive you back into spiritual captivity, that you will no longer trade your authenticity for acceptance. The emotional cycle cannot continue unless you keep participating in the ritual of self-rejection. But now Michael is commanding you to choose you, boldly, repeatedly, without guilt, without explanation. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is sacred, and it is the foundation of every miracle you've been waiting for. I am choosing me to get the blessing 7474. You were trained to feel guilty for prioritizing your own heart. That's why when you begin to rise, shame tries to chase you. But shame is a liar. Shame is a symptom of a system that fed you survival, but never nourishment. You are not selfish for saying, I matter too. You are not arrogant for saying, this time, I'm not breaking for someone else's comfort. You are aligned. And alignment will cost you the version of you that could be everything to everyone, but nothing to yourself. That version must now die so the divine version can live. Michael says, watch what happens when you stop betraying yourself. Watch how the cycle starts to dissolve. Watch how clarity replaces confusion. Watch how peace no longer feels like a stranger. The you that is rising now has boundaries, standards, sacred space. And those are not walls to keep people out. They are altars to protect what's holy within. The new you doesn't beg to be seen. She shines. He doesn't chase for closure. He chooses himself. You don't explain your healing. You embody it. That's the difference between surviving the cycle and transcending it. I am rising still to get the blessing 5757. But be warned. The old version of you won't die quietly. She will whisper doubts. You will beg for the familiar. They will try to convince you that growth is too lonely, too risky, too unknown. That's normal. Don't silence the voice. Just don't let it lead. Honor the fear, but don't follow it. Michael says, fear is not your compass anymore. You're walking with divine clarity now. And clarity won't always feel comfortable, but it will always feel true. And truth will hold you when old illusions try to seduce you back into the cycle. The world will react to your new vibration. Some people will vanish. Let them. Some will call you distant. Let them. Some will say you've changed. Say thank you, because changing is the goal. Healing is disruptive, and this disruption is divine. The you that's emerging now is not for everyone, and that's exactly why Archangel Michael started this message by saying, this is not for everyone. It's for you, the one who has stayed silent too long, the one who has betrayed themselves in the name of love, the one who's ready to stop being a background character in their own life. Type I am transforming to get the blessing 2626. There's a sacred energy now vibrating within you. It's the sound of chains breaking, but also of identity being rebuilt. You're no longer just someone who survives something. You are someone who is becoming something. Something holy, something strong, something eternal. This emotional cycle ends not just because you're tired, but because you're ready. Ready to rise, ready to be seen, ready to never again trade your essence for approval. Michael says, what's coming next will feel unfamiliar, but it will also feel like home. Because home is the version of you that finally refuses to leave herself again. Now that you've silenced the voice of self-betrayal, you stand at the beginning of something rare, something sacred. The rebuild, not of a life, but of an identity. Archangel Michael says, cycles do not only end when pain stops, they end when clarity builds something new. And clarity is rising in you now. Not as a thought, but as a new foundation. You're no longer surviving. You're no longer tolerating. You are becoming. And this becoming is not loud. It's steady. Like healing bones after a break. Like morning after a storm. You don't need to rush. You just need to rise. You've spent years constructing an identity around the wound. You called yourself strong because you never cried. Called yourself loyal because you never left. Called yourself real because you never said no. But those labels were forged in trauma. Michael wants to strip them away. Not to leave you empty, but to show you who you are beneath the armor. Because real strength isn't never crying. Real strength is crying and choosing to heal anyway. Real loyalty is not staying with dysfunction. It's staying true to your soul. And real love, it begins with how you treat you. You will be tempted, again and again, to go back, not to people, but to patterns. Because emptiness feels foreign. Stillness feels suspicious. Peace feels uncomfortable when all you've known is chaos. You'll wonder, is this too quiet? Is this too easy? But Archangel Michael says, peace is not proof that you've done something wrong. It's proof that you've finally done something right. Let it feel awkward. Let it feel new. Let it stretch you. The cycle depended on your confusion to survive. But this peace, it will teach you how to live. Type I am ready for peace to get the blessing 9191. Every healing journey demands construction, of trust, of truth, of rhythm. So now Michael calls you to ask, what are you building with your freedom? You've cleared the field. The old cycle is no longer in control. But what you plant here next matters. Because healed doesn't mean hollow. It means whole. You must rebuild in a way that supports the new you. That means honoring what energizes you. Moving toward people who mirror your healing, not your history. Creating routines that serve your clarity, not your chaos. You are not just recovering. You are rerouting. You once watered dead soil out of habit. You once poured into people who left you thirsty. But now your water is sacred. Your energy is a currency. Your time is a temple. And Michael urges you, don't spend it where it doesn't return. You are no longer obligated to keep proving your worth. Your worth is the groundwork now. You are the garden, not the gardener for other people's drought. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. You are tending to the divine space within you that no longer entertains disorder disguised as connection. Type I am a sacred space to get the blessing 3 verse 1434. And now that you know what peace tastes like, anything less will make you sick. You'll feel it immediately. The tension in your chest, the shift in your energy, the subtle grief that whispers, this is not aligned. That's the power of healing. It ruins your appetite for what once fed your dysfunction. And Michael says, let it. Don't chase numbness. Chase wholeness. Don't fill space just to avoid solitude. Sit with yourself. Hear your voice. Learn its rhythm. Build a life that doesn't need escape. Because the new you doesn't run. She rests. He roots. They radiate. You may not feel like you've arrived yet, but that's okay. Arrival was never the goal. Alignment is. You were never meant to perform your healing like a finished product. You were meant to live it as a daily devotion. To wake up and choose yourself again. To wake up and remember that you are no longer a servant to the cycle. You are no longer the echo of a broken pattern. You are the interruption. You are the one it ends with. You are the one heaven chose. And your rising will not only free you, it will ripple into everyone connected to your life. Type I am aligned to get the blessing 1616. The rebuild is sacred, not because it's perfect, but because it's intentional. Every time you say no to what once controlled you, you pour another brick into the foundation. Every time you rest instead of perform, every time you set a boundary instead of bending, every time you choose truth over comfort, the new you grows roots. Michael says, there is no turning back now. What's ahead may be unfamiliar, but it's divine. You are not just healing. You are rebuilding the future, brick by brick, breath by breath, truth by truth. Now that you've begun to rebuild, you will start to notice something extraordinary. The air feels different. The silence feels sacred. And for the first time in a long time, the future feels possible. But along with that possibility, fear may still linger. Because when you've lived inside an emotional loop, peace feels like a gamble. Joy feels like a trap. Happiness feels temporary. Archangel Michael says, that's not intuition talking. That's residue. The old pattern is trying to project itself forward. But your future will not look like your past. Not this time. Not anymore. You must understand, patterns don't just repeat in events. They repeat in expectation. They whisper lies in your moments of breakthrough. It's only temporary. Don't get too comfortable. Something will go wrong. And when you believe that, you sabotage the very things that are meant to bless you. Michael says, your job now is to trust your new foundation. To believe that what's coming isn't a setup for disappointment, but a sacred unfolding of everything you were always meant to experience. The future isn't a place of fear. It's the field where your freedom finally flourishes. Your old self had coping mechanisms. The new you will need receiving practices. You must learn how to receive good things without holding your breath, without preparing for pain, without questioning your worth. You must learn how to sit in joy without trying to earn it. That's the work now. The rebuild isn't just about protection. It's about permission. Permission to experience ease. Permission to laugh without apology. Permission to trust what's stable. Because stability isn't boring. It's sacred. And Archangel Michael says, if it feels peaceful, it's probably finally right. Type I am trusting peace to get the blessing 4646. Still, your nervous system might fight it. Even healed hearts flinch at the first sign of love. Even renewed minds second-guess the quiet. Even awakened souls sometimes want to run. Don't judge yourself. That's part of the healing. That's your spirit detoxing the fear of repetition. But just because the feeling is familiar doesn't mean the experience is. Just because your mind recognizes it doesn't mean your spirit is trapped again. Michael says, do not confuse awareness with doom. You're not slipping. You're shifting. This is what growth feels like. tender, terrifying, but ultimately true. You are not required to know what's next to trust what's now. You don't need to predict every step to walk forward. The cycle taught you to brace for impact, but heaven is teaching you to prepare for expansion. And expansion doesn't feel safe, it feels stretching. So give yourself grace in the stretch. Let yourself feel awkward in new joy. Let yourself pause before responding with old reflexes. Let yourself celebrate the small wins, because that's how you prove to your mind, we're not stuck anymore. We're safe now. And safety, real safety, is your new spiritual home. Type I am safe now to get the blessing 3939. Some relationships won't survive this new season. Some dreams will need to be redefined. Some goals will shift entirely. That's okay. You're not losing. You're aligning. The emotional cycle kept you loyal to things that didn't fit your future. But now Michael is clearing space, if not out of cruelty, but clarity. The next chapter of your life cannot be built on expired energy. You're not abandoning anyone. You're returning to yourself. The friends, the partners, the places that can't meet your new vibration aren't being punished. They're being released with love. And in their absence, you will meet the people who speak your healed language. There is power in not explaining anymore, in not defending your rise, in not shrinking to protect someone else's comfort. Archangel Michael reminds you, you're not required to prove your growth to people who only knew your pain. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Let them stay confused. You're not performing anymore. You're becoming. The version of you that's rising now is not for debate. She is divine. He is chosen. They are rooted. And the only validation you need is the knowing in your bones that you are no longer bound. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path. Type I am unshakable to get the blessing 8,181. What's ahead may still challenge you, but challenge is not the same as chaos. Tension is not the same as trauma, and discomfort is not the same as destruction. Learn the difference. Name the shift. Trust the new. You're no longer in the cycle. You're in the cocoon. The transformation is happening quietly now. Slowly. Steadily. With every choice you make to stay aligned, the future forms itself around your freedom. And Michael says, keep going. Don't look back. You are walking into the life that your past never believed you could handle, but your spirit always knew was waiting. You didn't just survive the emotional cycle. You outgrew it. And what you may not fully realize yet is this. You didn't just break the pattern for yourself. You broke it for everyone who comes after you. Archangel Michael says, this is legacy work now. Generational. Sacred. The cycle was never just personal. It was ancestral. You felt it so deeply because it ran through your bloodline like a silent agreement. But you said no more. You said not again. And heaven echoed back. You are the cycle breaker. Becoming a cycle breaker isn't easy. It means being misunderstood. It means standing alone sometimes. It means making decisions no one else in your family dared to make. But the strength to end what's been passed down isn't ordinary. It's prophetic. You are the fulfillment of prayers whispered by generations who never had your tools, your insight, your fire. Archangel Michael chose you, not because you were the strongest, but because you were the willing. And willingness is the only thing heaven ever needed to make the impossible possible. You might still carry shame from where you've come from. That's natural. You might still hear voices that say you're too much, too sensitive, too rebellious. But Michael says, the old labels don't belong here. You are not the black sheep. You're the bright light. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to disrupt, to cut cords, to change the spiritual DNA of your family line. You may not have been honored for that yet, but the reward is already unfolding, because freedom flows from you now, and that ripple will touch places you'll never see. Type I am the cycle breaker to get the blessing 5151. Let this sink in. The emotional pattern that had you stuck for years ends with you. Your children, whether physical, spiritual, or creative, will not inherit your pain. They will inherit your clarity. They will speak the language of wholeness instead of silence. They will know love without begging for it. They will feel safe in their own skin, because you taught yourself how to feel safe in yours. This is why it had to be you. Not because it was fair, not because it was easy, but because you were the one brave enough to heal loudly. Yes, there will still be moments where the old self tries to speak. That's okay. You're not immune. You're aware, and awareness gives you choice. Choice gives you power. Power gives you freedom. Now, when the echo of the past calls, you don't answer with panic. You answer with presence. You breathe. You pause. You listen to your new self, because you've built something stronger than survival. You've built sovereignty. And Michael reminds you now, you can trust yourself to lead you. That's the mark of a true cycle breaker. You become your own sanctuary. Type I am my sanctuary to get the blessing 3838. Even when no one claps, even when the healing gets heavy, even when you question if it's all worth it, keep going, because you are not healing for applause. You are healing for alignment. You are healing so that every room you enter vibrates at a higher level, so that your presence becomes proof that freedom is possible. You carry wisdom now earned, not taught. And Michael says, don't water it down. Don't soften your light to soothe people who refuse to rise. Stand tall in the fire you walked through. Speak boldly in the truth you bled for. This is what legacy feels like. Not always glamorous, but deeply grounding. You may never get the apology. You may never get the explanation, but you will get peace. You will get clarity. You will get a life that makes sense to your soul, even if it confuses others. That's your inheritance now. Not pain, but purpose. Not wounds, but wisdom. Not repetition, but rebirth. And everything you lost in the cycle. Your voice, your time, your identity is returning to you now. Refined by fire, held by angels, sealed by heaven. Type I am reborn to get the blessing 6969. Look around. Feel the shift. The emotional loop has lost its grip. You are no longer the person who tolerates what hurts. You are no longer the one who begs for scraps. You are no longer the version of yourself that had to prove they were enough. Now you know you're enough. And that knowing, deep, unshakable, holy, is the root of your transformation. Michael says, you didn't just change. You transcended. And the cycle didn't break you. It built you into someone who will never again forget who they are. Now that the cycle has broken and the dust has settled, something even more powerful begins to emerge. A new identity, but not the kind shaped by pain, survival, or performance. No, this identity is shaped by truth, by presence, by a divine internal knowing that whispers, you are not who you used to be. And Archangel Michael says, this is the moment you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of your former self, the self who tolerated too much, the self who chased love, The self who mistook struggle for purpose. That version no longer exists. Not in this new atmosphere. You see, when you've lived inside an emotional pattern for years, it becomes your mirror. You forget who you were before the pattern taught you how to bend, shrink, break. But now there is no more bending. There is only becoming. You are meeting yourself all over again. And Michael urges you to do so with reverence. Because what you see now is not a patched-up version of your past. It's a radiant version of your future. You don't just carry healing. You carry authority. You don't just know pain. You know power. Still, don't be surprised if the old wounds try to reintroduce themselves. Not to hurt you, but to test you. They will appear as subtle temptations. A phone call from someone who once drained you. An old habit knocking at the door of your new rhythm. A familiar emotion convincing you it's still home. But Michael says, your power is not in how you react. It's in how you choose. And your choices are different now. Because the healed you does not negotiate with confusion. The awakened you does not shrink for convenience. The aligned you does not apologize for existing in fullness. Type I am not who I was to get the blessing 4545. Even in moments of stillness, you are evolving. Your boundaries speak without words. Your silence is no longer fear. It is sovereignty. You are no longer desperate to be chosen. Because now you've chosen yourself. And that self is sacred. That self does not bend backwards to be understood. That self no longer seeks closure from broken places. That self is walking with heaven's pace, not the world's pressure. And that self, Michael says, is now qualified for greater purpose. Not because of perfection, but because of permission. You finally gave yourself permission to rise. Let this truth sink deep. Your story has changed, and so must your self-talk. No more calling yourself difficult. No more speaking lack into your vision. No more assuming love must be earned. The healed you speaks with clarity. You say no without guilt. You say yes with conviction. You say, I deserve peace not as a hope, but as a decree. Michael says, your voice has authority now. It carries the weight of every mountain you've climbed, and every chain you've shattered. And when you speak from this space, even heaven listens differently. Type I am restored to get the blessing 3434. Don't downplay the transformation just because others can't see it. Some people will still treat you like the version of yourself they once knew. That's not your burden to carry. You do not owe them your old self. You are not required to make others comfortable with your growth. Let them adjust. Let them fall away if they must. Michael says, when you grow beyond the pattern, you grow beyond the approval of those still living in it. And that's okay. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be powerful. The former you needed validation. The new you creates vibration. You walk into rooms and shift atmospheres, not because you seek attention, but because you embody truth. The frequency of freedom is not quiet. It is contagious. And you carry it now. Your presence is a reminder that pain can end, that cycles can break. That transformation is not just for the chosen few, it's for the one who decides. This ends with me, and you decided. That's why you've been chosen. That's why Michael stays close. Because your rising is not casual, it's cosmic. Type I am divine frequency to get the blessing 6060. You've earned more than just peace. You've earned perspective. You now see the pattern for what it really was. A teacher, not a punishment. A mirror, not a definition. And now that you've seen it clearly, you can never go back. Not mentally, not emotionally, not spiritually. The path ahead is yours to build, not from brokenness, but from boldness. And every step forward, no matter how quiet, is a step that declares, I am no longer a prisoner of my past. I am the prophet of my future. and heaven echoes that decree with thunderous agreement. You've shed too much to return to who you were. The self who tolerated pain in silence gone. The version of you who confused love with endurance dissolved. The identity that formed from trauma and survived on validation. That one no longer holds power. Archangel Michael says, you are not in recovery anymore. You are in redefinition. What's emerging is not a patched-up version of the past. It's a blueprint from heaven. You have graduated from the cycle. You are no longer who you used to be. And that is a spiritual announcement, not just a personal realization. The way you speak has changed. The way you listen to your inner voice has changed. The way you feel when someone tests your boundaries has changed. That's how you know the cycle didn't win. It revealed you. It carved you into clarity. It pressed you until you remembered your shape. And now, there is no going back to dimming your light, over-explaining your worth, or keeping small just to feel safe. You're not rebuilding the old you. You're remembering the original one. The one heaven designed before the world tried to edit your spirit. You used to think peace was the reward at the end of struggle. That joy was something you had to earn. That healing was a destination. But now you understand. Peace is your birthright. Joy is your natural state. Healing is a daily walk. You no longer wait to be free. You live free. And yes, the world might still expect you to respond like your old self. But you won't. Because the version of you who survived is no longer driving. The version who chooses is. And Archangel Michael affirms it again. You are not who you used to be. Type I am made new to get the blessing 3 verse 1434. This is why old spaces feel too small. Why certain conversations feel hollow. Why familiar connections no longer energize you. It's not pride. It's proof. Proof that your soul has outgrown the structures that once held it. You're not broken. You're evolving. And that evolution might look like distance. It might feel like isolation. But truly, it's alignment. You're aligning with your truth now, not your trauma. You're making decisions from your soul, not your scars. And while that might confuse others, it finally makes sense to you. That is more than enough. There's nothing left to prove. You've given enough, explained enough, waited enough. You no longer have to perform healing. You embody it. Your presence is your testimony. Your boundaries are your protection. Your silence is sacred, not passive. And your joy is not a luxury. It's your weapon. Michael says, your light now speaks louder than your wounds ever could. You don't need to revisit the old pain for proof. You already earned your clarity. Now it's time to live from that place. Without shrinking. Without second guessing. Without apology. Tie by and walking in clarity to get the blessing 8 verse 1282. You might still feel echoes of the old self. Sometimes healing does that. It whispers through memories, tempting you to question how far you've come. But look closer. You don't respond the same. You don't carry it the same. The emotion may visit, but it no longer rules. That's transformation. You're not avoiding the storm. You've learned how to stand inside it without losing your footing. The emotional cycle once owned your rhythm. Now, you dance to your own inner drum. That's what freedom feels like. Sovereignty over your spirit. Let others misunderstand your growth. Let them grieve who you used to be. That's their journey, not yours. Your only task now is to stay loyal to the light you fought to remember, to the truth you cried for, to the peace you bled for. Archangel Michael says, your life from this point forward must reflect the new architecture of your soul. Every choice, every connection, every word must echo your rebirth. You are no longer available for what dishonors your healing, and that in itself is a victory. Type I am living new to get the blessing 9595. There is nothing in the past that can hold you unless you choose to return. And now you don't return, you rise. You are the evidence that cycles can end. That trauma doesn't have the final word. That souls can remember themselves, even after years of forgetting. And this remembrance is not a moment. It's a movement, one that began inside you and will echo beyond you. Michael says, walk forward with boldness now, not as someone healing, but as someone healed, not as someone surviving, but as someone sent. The cycle is closed. The future is open, and you are ready, now that you no longer carry the weight of who you used to be. Something new is happening. You're not just rising, you're receiving, not just relief from the past, but a sacred invitation from the heavens. Archangel Michael says, this transformation wasn't only for you, it was preparation. You are being positioned now, not as the wounded one, not as the forgotten one, but as the vessel, the carrier of something greater than survival. You've become the space through which heaven can flow, because only someone who has bled can teach others how to stop the bleeding. You may not feel ready. You may still doubt your voice, your clarity, your role in the bigger story. But readiness isn't a feeling. It's a frequency. And your soul is finally vibrating high enough to receive divine instruction. This is where calling begins. This is where legacy becomes action. You've been entrusted with wisdom not just to sit in it, but to share it. That doesn't mean preaching or performing. It means living your truth so boldly that others can't help but remember theirs. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to become something undeniable. You are the answer to someone else's cry. You are the living, breathing reminder that transformation is possible. Not because you read it in a book, but because you became it in the fire. Michael says that the pain you endured gave you access to dimensions of compassion others can't fake. And now, you move differently, speak differently, see differently. You don't just hold light, you are light. And that light, refined in the furnace of your former cycles, is the exact medicine the world didn't know it needed until now. Type I am a vessel of light to get the blessing 10,323. And yet, with this divine positioning comes new pressure. Not the pressure to perform, but the pressure to remain aligned. Because your old habits will try to seduce you one last time. The past will send echoes disguised as comfort. And people who were comfortable with the old you will test the edges of your rebirth. But this is where you remain rooted. Because being a vessel means staying clean. It means choosing discipline over distraction. It means protecting your clarity like it's sacred. Because it is. And Michael will shield you as long as you stay devoted to truth. You won't be able to do what everyone else does. You won't fit in rooms that operate from ego. You won't be satisfied with shallow affirmation. That's the cost of awakening. But it's also the gift. You've become allergic to anything fake, to anything misaligned, to anything that tempts you to wear a mask. Because masks feel like suffocation now. And that's how you know. You've crossed over. You've stepped into the dimension where your soul leads. And everything else must rise to meet it. Or fall away. Type I am walking in purpose to get the blessing 4,646. Your presence will now activate others. Your energy will convict without condemnation. Your story will awaken something sacred in those who thought they'd never rise. You don't have to explain how you got here. Your posture speaks. Your peace speaks. Your wholeness speaks. And when you speak, Michael says, do it with fire, with clarity, with the authority that only comes from having broken something ancient. You are not here to take up space. You are here to reshape it. You are not a participant. You are a pioneer. But remember this. The higher you rise, the quieter your circle may become. That's not rejection. It's refinement. The crowd was never your confirmation. Your obedience is. Your peace is. Your alignment is. You're not waiting to be discovered. You've already been decreed. You don't need a platform to be powerful. You are the platform. a walking revelation, a breathing miracle, a soul so committed to truth that lies cannot linger around you anymore. I am divinely positioned to get the blessing 7272. This is your commissioning, not with fireworks, but with stillness, not with applause, but with an undeniable knowing that you have not just healed, you have ascended. The emotional cycles you broke were altars to prepare you for this sacred stewardship of what is real, what is holy, what is eternal. And Archangel Michael bows with reverence, not because you're flawless, but because you said yes, again, and again, and again, until the old couldn't stay, and the new had no choice but to rise. You made it, not just through the words, but through the war within. You faced the mirror, walked through the fire, and stood your ground when your old life called you back. Archangel Michael now speaks one final truth over your life. You are free, not halfway, not conditionally, completely, fully, eternally. The emotional cycle is closed, its grip is gone, and what stands in its place is something heaven honors deeply. A soul that chose truth over comfort, light over fear, and alignment over approval. You are no longer the echo of your pain. You are now the architect of your peace. You are no longer surviving the same lesson. You are now teaching through embodiment. What once tormented you now trembles at your presence. Because you are not who you used to be. You are who you were always meant to become. And Michael confirms, the shift is permanent. The cycle cannot return where awareness now lives. You hold the keys. You carry the sword. You walk with fire in your bones and stillness in your soul. Others will notice. The energy around you has changed. But you owe no explanations, only embodiment. Let your joy confuse the patterns that once imprisoned you. Let your peace preach louder than your pain ever did. Let your presence be the proof. And as you step forward, know this. The journey does not end here. It begins here. On new ground, with divine breath, under open skies. The pain didn't define you. The healing did. The future isn't waiting for you. It's welcoming you. Archangel Michael leaves you now with one verse final decree. I am free forever to receive blessing 9 verse 1999. The doors are open. The past is sealed. You are ready. Go become what you were born for. The cycle is broken. The calling has begun. And your spirit is rising. This was never for everyone. It was always for you. If this message is piercing your spirit and helping you step into divine truth, consider giving a super chat or super thanks today. Your support of $20 helps us continue creating powerful, prophetic messages like this one. We are grateful for every seed you sow. Also, if you'd like to support what we do, you can make a difference by donating via PayPal using the support here link in the description of this video. Every contribution helps us keep creating and sharing more with you. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. You'll receive regular prophetic guidance, exclusive content, and spiritual tools to keep you aligned with your divine path.